Okay, so have you ever felt kind of like you're in the dark when it comes to dividends from Korean companies?
Like you're just guessing.
Yeah, exactly, like kind of flying blind.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of investors feel the same way, but things are changing. The Korea Exchange is rolling out some new rules about how companies disclose information, and this is particularly about dividends. You know, those lovely payments that we all want?
Right.
So we're diving deep today into the details of this new guidance, and we've gone straight to the source. Basically, what we want to do is help you see how these changes are designed to make things more transparent, which is huge for investors.
It really is a big shift.
So this is all about moving towards more predictable dividends and stronger corporate governance.
Exactly. So in the past, right, under the old system, you often wouldn't actually know how much the dividend was going to be until after the record date had already passed.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. And it really did feel like you were kind of taking a gamble
It did.
because you're making decisions without all the information.
You didn't have a key piece of the puzzle, really.
Right. But now companies are going to be able to set that record date after they've decided how much they're going to pay out.
Makes a lot more sense.
It does. So how does that directly benefit you as an investor? Well, companies that plan to pay quarterly dividends, they now have to publicly announce the amount of that dividend before the record date even happens, so no more surprises.
Exactly.
So I guess it's fair to say the days of blind dividends are over.
They really are. And it's not just about, making an announcement either. The Korea Exchange has been super clear. There are two key things that need to happen. First, that prior disclosure of the dividend amount before the record date, like we talked about. But secondly, and this is really important, they have to put this policy in writing in their articles of incorporation.
Oh, right. Their articles of incorporation are essentially like the company's rule book.
Exactly. They're like the constitution of the company.
Okay, so it's not enough to just say they're going to do it. They have to formally make it a part of how they govern themselves.
Exactly. And both of those things are absolutely necessary for a company to be in compliance with these new rules.
So it seems like this is a very fundamental shift, right? It's being baked into the very DNA of how the companies operate. But it's interesting because this isn't just about tweaking those dividend payouts. The Korea Exchange is really stepping up its focus on corporate governance overall, and that's very evident in these 2025 reports.
Yeah, and it's interesting because what we're seeing here is a move away from simply having a policy in place,
Yeah.
On paper. It's all about demonstrating that they're actually implementing that policy in practice.
So it's not just about talking the talk.
No, it's about walking the walk.
I like that.
For example, we're talking about things like risk management and internal controls. Companies now need to show not only that these things are documented, but that they're actually putting them into action.
So giving proof, essentially.
Exactly. And the same goes for the independence of their internal audit personnel, making sure those folks can actually work independently.
Interesting. So it really is about increasing that level of scrutiny. Definitely. And I understand there's even more that's under the microscope now, right?
Oh, yeah. There's a bunch more.
Like what else?
So we're talking about things like requiring quarterly meetings between their internal and external auditors. Then they also have to have written policies in place specifically to protect the rights of minority shareholders. And even the board of directors has to get more involved. They have to actually review plans to increase the company's value at the board level.
So it's a really comprehensive approach to really making sure these companies are operating in a transparent and accountable way.
It really is. And, the Korea Exchange put it best when they said, and I quote, "Policies that are not executed in practice will be regarded as non-existent."
So yeah, they're basically saying if you're not doing it, it doesn't count, which I think is a really powerful statement. It's really about holding these companies accountable, not just for making promises, but for taking action.
Right.
So this begs the question, what happens if companies don't comply?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? So the deadline to submit these corporate governance reports is May 31st. And if they have significant errors in their report, or if they fail to submit it entirely, they risk being designated as a non-compliant disclosure entity.
Which I imagine isn't a good look.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Now, so far, companies have been able to go back and correct errors when they've been pointed out.
So there's been a little bit of leniency.
There has been, but the word on the street from the ICAE, that's the International Conference for the Advancement of ESG, is that going forward, things are going to get a lot stricter. Just fixing those errors might not be enough.
Especially if they keep making the same mistakes.
Exactly. So continued non-compliance or a failure to improve could lead to some real penalties down the line.
So the stakes are getting higher.
They really are.
So as an investor, this all boils down to a push for more reliable information.
Right.
You can have greater confidence in the information that you're getting about these companies.
Absolutely. And if we take a step back and look at the big picture, there's a very clear push from the Korea Exchange towards greater transparency and accountability across the board.
Yeah.
It's not just about ticking boxes. It's about creating a fair market for everyone involved. So you, as an investor, can make better decisions.
That's right. So the big takeaway here is that the Korea Exchange is serious about improving corporate governance in Korea. This is a huge step towards better transparency, not just for dividends, but for the way these companies are run in general.
Absolutely. And this raises a really interesting question that I'd like to leave you with. What does it really mean for a company to not just claim good governance, but to actually live it, to demonstrate it through their actions and through the information they disclose?
Yeah, it's easy to talk a good game, but are they actually following through?
Exactly. And thinking even more broadly, what other areas of corporate behavior do you think might benefit from this kind of scrutiny? What else could we be looking at more closely to ensure that companies are not just talking the talk, but actually walking the walk? Food for thought, right?
It really is. Thanks for joining me today.
It was my pleasure.